So one thing that will happen with reenactment swords and sparring swords in general is that the hilt assembly does tend to get loose sometimes, especially with heavy use, and especially as the sword gets older. And even if the sword can get exposed to varying temperature ranges, varying humidity ranges. So what will end up happening is sometimes the wood will actually compress, and then it'll start to all wobble and stuff. And one thing I've found that happens sometimes, because of the way that peen construction works, what you have here is the end of it is actually just hammered over. The whole tang comes up through the top and is hammered over, which is not, in my opinion, not exactly period for a lot of Viking swords. I don't know about this type of, I guess it's the Brazil nut kind of pommel. I don't really know for this one, but certainly trilobe and some of the other ones. It's actually two plates, and the tang comes up through the bottom block, gets peened over, and then two rivets come up through and attach the top block to it. So I don't know about these ones, but a lot of good reenactment swords are assembled this way. I personally wouldn't fight in any kind of situation like that with a screwed-on pommel. That might work for certain things, but when you're in a mass battle and you're swinging the sword, you don't want your pommel to fall off and the blade to go flying. In a more controlled environment, you might be able to notice that your sword is starting to get shaky and stuff. But in my opinion, it's too much of a risk to do it in reenactment. So reenactment swords try to get peened construction or welded. If the hilt components are welded, that's good too. So what happens is the wood of the grip shrinks or gets compressed by this being squeezed. And so if the grip is loose and the pommel block is loose, you can basically lock this in a vise and then hammer down on here. Sometimes you can do it cold, but hot peening is probably better unless this is made of something like brass or bronze and you might melt it. If it's steel, then you can hot peen it. Then all you have to do is clean up all the sections so that it's not blued or whatever anymore. So in the case of this sword, what ended up happening was the guard was loose, but the grip and the pommel are on there completely securely. So I couldn't figure out why that was until I flipped it over, and it's gonna be a hard thing to look at here because you can't really get the angle on it. See up in here, it actually appears like there's epoxy or leather jammed in there. I think it could be leather, which sort of locks this assembly a little bit in. And I noticed that a lot of manufacturers have that. And so one thing that I noticed other people do is they would wrap wire underneath the bolster or the guard and tighten that in, and so that would lock it. I don't like that because that sometimes a little piece of wire comes out and you get it on your hand or whatever, and that's bad. That hurts. So the wire wasn't really an option for me for this. So what I ended up doing was inside here, I don't know if you can really see there, it's dark on the bottom, and there's some lighter stuff here and in the fuller. And what that was I took little pieces of veg tan leather and set them on top, then used a flat screwdriver to push them down inside and tap on that with a hammer to sort of seat the leather down inside. And that has actually made this solidly rigid. And the good thing about the leather is that with moisture changes, it'll actually not entirely the same, but it'll sort of shrink and expand with the wood a little bit. Not quite the same, but it also compresses and expands. So I have a feeling this will work pretty well. So one thing that you can actually do to make that more solid is if you kind of coat the leather in epoxy before you drive it in, then it'll actually bind to the blade and the metal inside the bolster or guard, and that way it'll do that. But it fixes that section rather tightly. There's very little wiggle in this anymore, and so that's, I think, in my opinion, a far cleaner way of fixing that problem. So I hope this tip helps people. If it doesn't, then if you have a better way than that of fixing that problem, please leave that in the comments. I'd like to know. This is just sort of what I came up with for it, and we'll see how it works. It'll last. It could last a while in sparring and everything. One of my other ideas failed. I actually made a little copper wedge to put in there, but in sparring the wedge fell out and is now somewhere in the grass in a park. So yeah, if you have a better thing, then please let me know. I'd like to hear about that stuff. So yeah, so I guess that was a good just a quick tip on gear maintenance. So thank you for watching.